Hi, it's Kevin May from PhocusWire. Welcome to the PundIT Show number 17 in our series. It's been a bit of a break since we did the last one, but we're back here at a live show, and it's our sister brand Phocuswright's Phocuswright Europe event, PundIT Show, which is a podcast. We video this one. So, it's just our chance to have a little chat about some of the things that are going on. Siew Hoon from WebInTravel, Maggie from Phocuswright. Okay, you're both interviewing people tomorrow. Who have you got? Who are you interested in seeing? Now, bear in mind that this is going to go out after the show is probably finished this week. So what are you expecting your people to say? And then when the show comes out, we can see whether they actually said it.
Well, if I knew what they were going to say, why we wouldn't do the event.
Right.
But I'm interviewing Olivier Gremion from Booking.
Yep.
And obviously we're going to talk about their plans for booking, particularly in private accommodations,
Yep.
given a lot of the changes going on there. I think that's the biggest portion of that interview. And I'm in the morning as a part of WIT at Phocuswright. I'm doing a talk with Jeff Lewis from TripAdvisor and Mika from Amadeus in Singapore. So we're going to talk about Asia and doing business in Asia as a non-Asian brand.
Okay, and Siew Hoon, you've got your specific section tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
Who have you got?
So, in 90 minutes, we will breeze through Asia and the Middle East, which is like half the world. So we're going to make that really intense and fast-paced and relentless. We've got a panel of investors. We've got William Baobin, who's like the tech, eyes over China, North Asia. So William is going to talk about the investment trends that he's seeing and the possibility of, definitely they say that winter is already here in China.
What does that mean?
Meaning that the capital has dried up really, and for startups it's going to be really, really tough, small startups. So there's kind of what we're seeing is like a flight of capital to really only the big. So we're seeing a consolidation of capital, only like the big boys are getting all the capital and all the small ones are kind of withering on a vine and, really trying to just get bites of it. So we're going to hear that, and then we're going to hear from Andrea Trevisan from Amadeus Capital Partners, who is going to talk about the investment trends that he's seeing in Southeast Asia. He's vested in a couple of e-commerce startups that are non-travel, which is quite interesting as well.
Okay.
And then we've got we're going to put the spotlight on Middle East as well.
Yeah.
Because this year we had our WIT Middle East
in
April
Dubai,
9th, which was fantastic success. So we feel that that's a really exciting part of the world that's very similar to Southeast Asia in how it's developing. And so we're going to spend 25 minutes just really talking about the Middle East and the opportunities there. Yeah.
I'm interested in this kind of seasonality of the investment money. So they're into the winter now. How long does it take to get through that? Or is this kind of uncharted territory because it's never had that much kind of capital to invest in startups before?
Who knows? I mean, if it's like Iceland, the winter is forever, right? Because I just came from
Which
Iceland.
you've just been there over the weekend,
It's like full year is winter. I'm in there in late spring and it feels like winter. So I think, I think it depends, But there is definitely, I don't know whether Maggie would agree, but maybe we are also seeing a flow of capital from the West to Asia. So maybe
And from Asia to the West a little bit more now too.
Yeah. So we're seeing this two flow. So maybe what is lost may be gained, So you don't know, right? It's a cycle. So.
Yeah.
Do you know if he's talking about that specifically for travel, or he really, because he's in a lot of verticals.
Yes.
So this would be more broad than just travel, right?
More broad, but he keeps an eye on travel because he's invested in a couple of travel startups as well.
Yes.
So we're definitely seeing that in travel too, though, because if you look at companies like Grab, right? They're coming into travel. They got all the funding.
Yeah.
And then you got Oyo, which is like expanding everywhere, and they got chunks of funding too.
Yeah.
So
what do you think of the Oyo story? I mean, just generally,
I just find it so fascinating.
Yeah.
Like this guy, 19 years old from Orissa, India, one of the poorest states, has just created a whole new space for himself, and just attracted billions of dollars.
Yeah.
So I just find that story very fascinating. I don't know where it's going to end, but
where do you think it's going to end?
I mean, the valuation is really high.
Yeah.
I was really surprised that Airbnb went in with the valuation being what it is, and I think there's a lot of questions about the reality on the ground, particularly as they tout their China business so highly, and the numbers that they publish on their business in China have not been independently verified, I would say.
Right.
And it's confusing why the model that they've pivoted to is even needed in China. So I have a ton of questions about that business.
Right, and it's not just China that's getting the focus. They've just made this acquisition here in Europe with the
and in the
leisure
US,
thing. I mean,
there's
that was pretty much out of left field last week or the week before, or wherever it was.
It was leisure homes, wasn't it?
At leisure, yeah.
And that was, when we saw the price, we were thinking, well, they just offloaded a load of things to another brand in Germany late last year anyway. So we didn't think there was actually that much in the stable, but Oyo's paid multi-$100 million deal for that company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So they've got their eyes on Europe, and
they got the eyes on the world. We're seeing Asia-based brands, I think, going global, right? I mean, in the past it was sort of Western brands coming to Asia and globalizing, and now that we're seeing the other way around. So maybe the world will be a fairer, more equal place, in the next decade or so.
Yeah.
As this forces play out.
That's a nice positive thing that we would usually end on, but we've still got some time to go. So, I mean,
edit it.
One of the questions that we as interviewers often ask people when we're on stage is, what keeps you awake at night? It's a classic kind of moderator's question, but what do you think? Say you've got Glen Fogle on stage, rather than him answering, you answer. What do you think keeps someone like Glen Fogle awake at night?
Probably his health.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think people run a really intense business. It's high intensity, needs high energy. He's under scrutiny. So I would think that the only thing that should keep Glen Fogle awake is making sure that he's physically able and mentally able to take on the paranoia and challenges of leadership in this really fast-moving world. So that would be what I would say.
Same question, Maggie, but if it was someone, say, like Steve Kaufer.
Steve Kaufer.
Oh, he's got a lot to keep him away, right?
He does.
Yeah, that's why I said Steve Kaufer, because
it's a harder question. Not his health. He doesn't have time to think about his health. No, I think in that case, it's how do you keep that business truly relevant from a referral standpoint?
Right.
Clearly, consumers love TripAdvisor. They've made some efforts to make consumers love TripAdvisor even more, and it's no real sign that shift to the sort of social feed thing has really caught on. But obviously, the shift to mobile hasn't gone spectacularly for them, and Google is the king of all meta search at this point. So I think the business is tough for a TripAdvisor. Yeah,
and they're a listed company now, so the scrutiny is on them every quarter, isn't it? So, okay, right. So we've got what keeps people awake at night. What do you think?
What keeps you awake?
What
Kevin?
keeps me awake is putting this studio together. 45 interviews or whatever we're doing this week. So it has actually been that. But what else keeps me awake at night? Not a lot. I've got a little puppy barking downstairs. That's probably what keeps me awake at night a little bit. What do you say? I mean, it's been a fairly, interesting year since we were here 12 months ago, and then since, 6 months ago when we were in Los Angeles. What do you think has happened in the 12 months that's kind of surprised you a little bit, whether it's an acquisition or a development or something like that?
In the last 12 months?
Yeah, since we were all here in Amsterdam last year.
I think for me, it's what I learned in the last year, and what I learned in the last year is this new market that's the Middle East. I am so blown away by the potential and opportunity of the Middle East, and I think we've always seen Middle East through, sort of cynical, skeptical eyes, right? You know, I think, oh, that's a region of turbulence and, you know, violence and all that. But being there and learning about really the incredible plans by Saudi Arabia to open up to leisure tourism, the transformation that's happening there with the traditional travel group like Althea, you know, seeing brands like TravelStart, ClearTrip, and WeGo really making a go of the Middle East, you know.
Yeah.
So that to me is what I've learned in the last 12 months. You know,
Okay.
that market is really exciting.
And because brands such as WeGo and TravelStart, as you said, have targeted it, is it only really just a question of time before everyone else goes?
Totally.
So that must probably keep the likes of Ross and Stefan awake then, right?
Yeah, but
But that's where they got the first mover thing.
Yeah,
right?
I mean they're like the pioneers, right? You know, and then you've got you've got the really strong local players as well, you know. So we definitely, and then you've got companies like Checkout sort of preparing the market, getting the landscape ready so that global players can come in and just kind of plug into the local market. So, you know, we're going to see a few years of really, really exciting growth there.
Okay, Maggie.
The money pouring into tours and activities has been surprising. It's obviously a very messy space in many ways.
Yeah.
It's not, I don't think we've truly identified that consumers, you know, really want to book ahead of time online. That the, you know, the walk up to the provider thing works pretty well for a lot of people. And at the same time, suppliers in that space seem, you know, some really shifting to online, some not. And then, of course, they can, you know, often do quite well selling directly on their own.
Yeah. Well, we can talk about this now because this podcast goes out after tomorrow. So tomorrow, as we know, Get Your Guide is going to get $484 million in funding, series, whatever the letter it is. So that's, you know, the valuation of that company is going to be massive. And they've just scored $500 million in funding for something, you know, that 4 or 5 years ago really wasn't part of the sector's investment world, right? So that goes to your point a little bit?
It does, and I think, you know, you've got, on the one hand, you've got this same investor involved in.
Yep.
You've got one investor involved in both. Is that saying that this is not a winner-take-all scenario for those tours-focused OTAs? Of course, Booking and Expedia are trying to do more in that area, and so they're going up against those big guys.
I mean, Expedia, to be fair, has been doing it for years.
Yes.
It's sold tours and activities for a long time.
But you know, I mean, I've been using Booking.com on this trip, you know, through Iceland and booking on them, and I've got to say that they're doing a very good job in terms of like keeping you know, on top of like what other activities they have, you know. So every day I'm getting, you know, because you're a Booking.com customer, you get 20% discount off on all the attractions, you know. And so, you know, it's basically following me and recommending me ahead of time. You know, it's not personalizing. It doesn't know who I am, but it's just kind of, you know.
That's only going to come
kind of firing,
eventually, though,
yeah,
right?
it's just firing stuff at me right now, but it's getting my interest, right? I go, oh, you know, well, here's what I can do in Reykjavik when I'm, you know, and I get a 20% discount. So,
discounts, though, is that where a lot of the money is going to end up being spent?
On discounts, yeah.
It's a long game,
I mean, it's
though,
a discount
right?
on a fairly low value product in the first place as well.
But,
Yeah, the
but the
Heineken
market is
Museum.
but then their
massive,
margins
though.
are small too. So
Yeah.
where are you making money if you're discounting, you know, if you're discounting 20% and you're taking 30?
But the market is massive, though, when you think about it, right? You know, even with the traditional tour operators, I mean, it was in the in-destination.
Yeah.
There is a huge income, and now you can put in dining, you can put in restaurants, right? You know, and that's part of the travel experience as well. And so, you know, you can actually, to me, layer on that pie, right, and add more.
Yeah.
So it's a long game.
Okay, so we'll finish up in a minute then. It's a shorter podcast than normal, but we've got a lot of stuff going on today. So, Empires on the Edge is the theme of this year's
Which
Europe.
empire are we talking about?
Well, that's what I was going to
Empires.
ask you.
This is the British Empire that's totally on the edge.
Let's not
The
go.
edge of oblivion.
Let's not go down. Let's not go down that one. We do actually have a panel here this week about Brexit and things,
Oh,
don't
how
we?
exciting.
In the travel business, which empire would you say is on the edge? We'll start with you, Maggie, this time.
Well, I think the idea is, what do we mean by edge? So
Okay.
on the edge, it's a little bit of a dual meaning there. So you could be on the edge of a cliff that you're about to fall off, or you could be on the edge of glory. How's the rest of that? I don't know
Oh
the
my
next.
gosh, that Lady Gaga
So,
song.
so seriously, I think that is part of the idea, that question of the biggest players in particular. Obviously, empires generally refers to a sizable entity, and are they, to what extent are they under threat, and to what extent are they really just about to gobble everything up?
So maybe I was just being a negative journalist because I just saw it as a very half-empty empire's on the edge of collapse.
I'm here to bring the sunshine. That's
On the edge
Isn't
of
she sweet?
success, but being
Yeah.
a journalist, so like you, I'm kind of dark as well, and so I think in terms of the
That's
travel,
why we've got black curtains this year. It was
in
very
terms of
white
the-
last year.
In terms of the travel world, I think the empire that is on edge is planet Earth, and I think
Big
that
picture stuff, right?
yeah, and I think that we talk about let's do some cool things in Seoul, or let's do some cool things in Bangkok, and in Seoul they have yellow dust, and then in Chiang Mai there's pollution. In Amsterdam they complain about too many tourists being concentrated, and I think that we have to learn to manage. We have to learn to manage our destinations better, so that there is harmony between, I think, local communities and travelers, because I don't think that that's going to be healthy.
So we're talking about sustainability and over-tourism there, but what about flying?
What about
The
flying?
very crux of how
Notion of
a lot of people have arrived at this event, and
Yeah.
air pollution and stuff. I mean, as an industry, maybe not as us as reporters and analysts and things like that, but as an industry, it should be doing better, right?
Yeah, but whether consumers are prepared to pay the price is always the case, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think Europe is leading the way in terms of carbon credits and all that. But the other thing about travel, the planet being on edge is, Jeff Bezos just announced his blue moon lander, right? Could space travel be the next frontier, right?
The next empire to be
Yeah,
made,
the next
right?
empire, and poor planet that's out there, humans are coming.
Yeah. Okay, last one. So I probably don't travel as much as maybe you two do, just a couple of times a year. But what's the
You travel.
biggest?
I try to keep
What's
up.
the biggest pain in the arse that you have when you're traveling? Is it the airport? Is it something else? You always talk about pain points that need solving and things like that.
Well, me first.
Visas. For me, it's
Visas.
visas.
For you, it's visas.
You see, I carry a Malaysian passport, and that's not, it's not in the top 10 of desirable passports. So, just visas. Traveling to China has been quite tough, even for Malaysians. So I think visas. They really do make it hard.
Okay, Maggie.
So probably when I hit the highest point of anxiety is standing in line at the airport, but you know what? Money could be a lot easier in 2019. I'm very often exchanging money, or I'm worrying about how I'm getting screwed when I'm paying with a credit card. I would love a great digital solution that works across borders.
Like a global mobile
Without-
wallet that you can just kind of use
Yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah.
Okay. There we go.
All right.
I'd like to chat more, but thank you very much, Siew Hoon and Maggie.
Thank
We
you,
have to look
Gary.
at this camera and that camera. Let's look at both cameras. It's a podcast. Thank you very much, everyone.